Welcome to Murderabilia Exposed. I'm Andrew.
And I'm Taylor.
Recently, I took a trip to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, to the Alcatraz East Museum, which I've always wanted to go to, which is formerly the Crime and Punishment, if I'm not mistaken, from Washington, D.C. And they have so many different artifacts there, not even just Murderabilia. They have like Martin Luther King Jr.'s death mask and, different things from assassinations from like presidents and anything and everything related to crime you can think of. And of course, Ted Bundy's Volkswagen, the car from the Bonnie and Clyde movie, the replica car. There was a little like train of sorts that John Wayne Gacy painted, which was fucking cool. Had like all like the dwarves and shit on there. And of course, they had things like, mass shooters, Columbine, things like, from people like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne Gacy. And I know that you have quite a few artifacts from quite a few people that were in the museum there, and we could we'll have you show a few artifacts. The first being Ted Bundy. I know that there was quite a few Ted Bundy letters at the museum there, which were pretty neat to see. And I've had a few Bundy pieces over the years, but sadly I don't have any right now. But I know you have quite the collection, to say the least.
Yeah, I just have the one Bundy right now. I try and keep every big name, or at least semi-notable big name, in stock at all times, having a handful of pieces from each case, each cult, or each serial killer. Bundy's one of the ones. Bundy, Kemper, and Kaczynski are the three that as soon as I get a piece, it's gone. They're really hard to hold on to. You don't find them often. I think there's probably an okay amount of stuff out there, but most of it is in museums, like you said, or in private collections. I have a letter here from 1978, a one-page letter in an envelope. So I'll show the letter here first. I'm going to keep it the plastic here. I usually take them out, but this one I'll keep in here because it's pretty fragile and it's a very old letter. There's a lot of yellowing on the pages. It's the kind of page where if you were to fold it, it would crack. It's almost so thin. But Bundy had kind of notoriously really nice handwriting for all of his letters and everything he ever wrote. The envelope for this, unfortunately, the front and the back are split. And it was somebody just completely shredded it when they opened it up. It almost has tape on it, almost as if it were in a scrapbook. But you can see that like the signature here is kind of ripped, so you only really have Undy on the envelope and his address. But obviously, this is all his handwriting, regardless. Yeah, this one is sold. It's on a payment plan with somebody, and it was a piece that, as soon as I got it, when it comes to all three of those names, Bundy, Kaczynski, and Kemper, because they're such big cases, every time I get anything, there's always somebody who's already waiting who would ask me at some point, hey, do you have this guy? And I always have somebody to reach out to. If anyone has Bundy stuff, let me know, because I'm always trying to get Bundy.
What's funny is a lot of people say that not Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy and Eileen Wuornos have very beautiful handwriting, and I certainly can't disagree with the Eileen Wuornos, aspect. She had really nice handwriting.
Oh yeah, and she wrote a lot of letters, and they're so consistent. I don't think I've ever seen a difference in writing between any of them. Like, it's just extremely, extremely consistent.
Yeah, of course, Jeffrey Dahmer, and you have the Jeffrey Dahmer collection that you've been selling, for what, the past year or so, or almost the past year or so. There was quite a few Dahmer pieces in the museum there, and I know you have a lot more heavy hitters though. Do you have anything pulled out there that you haven't necessarily put out there that much, or a lot of people really don't know that you have?
Yeah, I got one here. I listed it a while ago, but it was kind of under the radar. I didn't post about it anywhere, so it just kind of got lost in the fray of the site. This is an original school photo from Bath Elementary. It's a grade 5 class photo. So you can see Jeff is in kind of the pink shirt right here. It's a little hard to tell, but it's distinctly Jeff. He doesn't have glasses on in this, and it's very rare to see a photo of him even when he was young without glasses. So that's kind of interesting. And you can see like the Bath Elementary grade 5. I'm not sure if any of these people were notable in Jeff's life past this. I know that some of his friends from high school, kind of somebody he went to did that comic. My friend Dahmer, obviously. Some people he went to high school with has done interviews and stuff, but I don't know if anybody from elementary school has really reached out or been into the public. But I'm sure that somebody on here remembers him from back then for sure.
And that's like an original photo that was taken by the photographer, like a first generation.
Yeah, yeah. You can see it's got like, well, you can't really see, but it's got the Kodak water printing on the back. It's the one you would have gotten at like in the little cardboard folder at the end of the school year, you know.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so it's a one of. It's just the one photo. I haven't made prints or replicas or anything of this at all, but yeah, this is very uniquely like just a one of. It's a photo too that hasn't been public before ever anywhere. I mean, it's listed on my site, so somebody was browsing through everything and they could see it on there. But yeah, it hasn't been in any documentaries or magazines or published in any way.
So what's the price tag on that then?
I think this one's at 3,000 right now,
Oh, okay.
2,500 or 3,000, I believe. That's kind of what I have most of the photos priced around is 2 to 3,000, depending on if they've been released publicly or not, and then if they have been released publicly, if they're more infamous photos or if they're lesser well known, you know, and the quality of the picture. Because there's quite a few here to kind of sort through. It varies photo to photo.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good thing to mention because I'm sure a lot of people would wonder like why is a photo worth 25 to $3,000? But of course, being somebody so prolific like Jeffrey Dahmer and
Mm-hmm.
a literally original one of a kind copy, you can't, you know, get that anywhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
the next best thing you can be is have it signed, but
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, to make I guess a comparison, at why certain things are priced certain ways. Using Rod Farrell for an example, he's like a known case, but not obviously a big heavy hitter name. But there's a lot of his childhood stuff on the market, childhood drawings and photos, and things from when he was a kid, things from his house, homework projects. My assumption is somebody got in touch with his family and bought a whole bunch of stuff at some point. But they're pretty inexpensive because even signed things, because it's not as high profile of a case, and because it's out there and it's on the market. Whereas this stuff has been, no one has it at all, right? Except for I guess me right now, temporarily in this inventory.
right. Plus, Dahmer was killed, super quick after getting to prison. Who's to say that if he was alive today, that his stuff would be worth like, next to nothing, almost like a BTK kind of thing.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like Raider definitely is somebody who his stuff isn't. It's not super hard to come by. It's not super expensive, but I'm sure at some point it will be. I'm sure if they ever did a season 3 of Mindhunter, it would shoot up in value because they were hinting at doing more with him, right? Not that a show always directly influences the price of items, but Kemper stuff wasn't really as sought after until after Mindhunter came out, and it just kind of depends. It's mostly people that don't have such a light on their case that will get more notoriety when something like that happens, as opposed to like a new series on Bundy, right? It's not like a new series is going to come out and this letter is going to double in value. People already know about Bundy.
Right, right, right. Yeah, just like that recent Ramirez. What was it like a documentary on Netflix? His stuff shot up quite a bit after that. I was
Mm-hmm.
pretty shocked, but
Well, I think with him, people realized, and there is quite a bit of stuff out there. He wrote quite a lot, but I think people realized that he's kind of one of the big names, the big heavy hitters, right? It's Bundy, Dahmer, Gacy, and Ramirez is like Ramirez and Charles Manson are almost just as up there, right? So I think people realize, oh, he's one of the big guys, and there's not going to be anything else from him.
let's see. So there was Bundy, Dahmer. There was so much in the museum. There was Geen.
Mm-hmm.
Basically every name that you can think of that was pretty high profile and of status was there. Even like a little what was it, the Rolling Stones magazine. It was kind of funny to see that because I have one of those of the Boston bomber that was on the front cover. They took
Yeah.
it down almost immediately when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to museums, there's others. There's the Zach Baggins Museum, and that's in Las Vegas. I went to that one time, and the Murderabilia room was pretty amazing actually. There was quite a few Gacy paintings, and he supposedly has the world's most haunted object, which is like behind glass and steel
Yeah.
and whatever.
Yeah, his thing is more focused on paranormal stuff, but he also has pretty good true crime collection. I don't think a lot of it is on display too. I think he has more things that are kind of under wraps, from what I understand. I know he has David Koresh's Camaro. He owned the Sharon Tate murder house for a while, and he sold that. I'm sure that he has some pieces of it that he kept or something. Um, there's also the Museum of Death, which had a location in Hollywood, which is closed, and I think they're trying to relocate right now. And they also have a location in Louisiana, is it maybe
Yeah, I think it's New Orleans.
New
I want
Orleans?
to.
Yeah. There's a crime museum in the UK as well that focuses on more UK stuff, but they're not the most prominent things. There's only a handful, because it's not necessarily. I mean, the the Alcatraz East obviously is like the big one, but um, you think for instance like the Zach Baggins one. He's a huge celebrity. He's part of the appeal of his thing, right? And his name kind of sells the museum. I think if I tried to open a museum in Las Vegas, the rent would be so ridiculous that trying to get enough people to go to it to be able to even make the rent would be difficult, right?
Right. You know, it's funny. A few years ago, I was actually out in Vegas and I was looking at possibly moving out there. And there was a woman that owned a oddity shop, and I was thinking about having like a little true crime museum out of there. But
Mm-hmm.
the more I thought about it, it's like you have to make this much money for overhead, just to pay rent and just to, do this and that. And it's kind of scary when you think about it. I mean, it sounds like a really cool idea, right? Like a true crime museum and, something you love to do, for a living, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to invest so much money. And let's say you invest like 10 grand and you don't even make it like 6 months, then you're shit out of luck and got to find
Mm-hmm.
something else to do and pack up and hit the road and probably sell your shit to make all the money back that you lost.
Yeah, I've been told by people a lot of times, oh, you should open a museum with this stuff. It's wild stuff that you have. And for me, there's a handful of reasons why I haven't done that. Glad I have a chance to kind of go over that a bit because I can kind of direct people towards this because I talk about this a lot with people. Um, I get the appeal, right? But the first off, the people that are saying, "Oh, you should open this museum," I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and unless they're all going to fly here to see it, right? It's not going to be a destination spot where someone's going to spend hundreds of dollars to come visit. Otherwise, they could just come to my house. I'll charge them admission here. That's fine. But the amount of people that would be, walking traffic coming in and out would be difficult. I would have to work essentially full time doing just that by myself, uh, running everything. I wouldn't be able to ship any orders. I wouldn't be able to sell items or buy items. I would have to just run the place to be able to afford to have it open, right? I wouldn't be able to be paying employees. You got to think about admission. How many people are going to be walking down the street every day and go, "Oh, let's go in here," even if it's 100 people a day, uh, uh, at $10 each. Like it's not a sustainable thing, even with high volume. It would have to be kind of shifted directly towards I'm just all I'm doing. I wouldn't be able to get new items. I wouldn't be able to ship anything out. And the way I pay my bills and make money is by selling items, right? By buying and selling physical items. So putting a stop on that and kind of halting my business to do that would be, I think, more of a passion project than a viable option. It's like I love hanging out at the bar where I play pinball and having beers and drinking pinball, but I'm not going to start a bar, become a bartender, and buy a bunch of pinball machines to try and live off of that because that's just asking for stress and for difficulty, and it's so much more stuff, right? I'd have to stop doing things that I enjoyed for the sake of that. Um, I think keep people with their enthusiasm behind it. I get that people are interested in seeing certain things, but like if these people aren't going to fly out to the true crime museums that already exist and see that stuff, they're not going to be able to put the time and money into supporting a new one, right?
Right, right. And I mean, it does sound like a good idea and it is like a good fantasy, but like you said, it's,
Mm-hmm.
high risk, low reward, I would think, I mean,
Oh yeah.
especially, making money back, rent, and
Mm-hmm.
you got to insure all your shit and insure the building.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure it'd be a headache.
Yeah. I'm already running a small business and it's out of my place with no overhead essentially, and it's already a lot of work. It's a full-time job. Like I had to take calls all day and night depending on people I'm dealing with all around the world, and do order fulfillment, and it's already research, and meetings, and it's already just so much that I like doing this, and I don't want to give that up. if there was some kind of dream scenario where it's like, oh, you can set this thing up and you'll make more money, like sure, but there's no way that would really happen, right? And the people that are running them now are in different circumstances where they've got a different business background that's worked for them. Um, but I just like doing this. That's why I share things online, you know. That's why I have a YouTube where I show things off. And that's why we're doing the Patreon where we're going to show some stuff off, is because that way people can, uh, you know, if they want to like get some money to support or whatever, they can buy stuff from the sites, or they can pay the Patreon, or even just like watch the podcast and see stuff and support the view count, um, to get, which just helps get the word out about stuff, right? But yeah, doing it like this is optimal and the least stressful, I think. Um, yeah, I think that covers it. So the Museum of Death in Hollywood, for instance, as an example, they've been open for years and years and years. They've got, you know, bunk beds from Heaven's Gate. They've got one of Charles Manson's guitars. They've got a lot of really, really, really high end items. And I mean, not that I don't in my collection as well, but that place was on Hollywood Boulevard, which I would assume is one of the highest foot traffic areas in the world, at least in the United States, right? For tourists or people coming through. And they had to close that location and haven't found a new location yet. Um, because I assume it had to do with, you know, the business wasn't good enough in that spot, so they needed to find a better spot for it. And if you couldn't keep something open there with that level of people coming through, um, you know, how is that going to work in a smaller town or a smaller city or even somewhere in Canada? I'm in one of the biggest cities in Canada, and I don't think there's enough of a people behind it. You're also taking on a lot more risk of upsetting people or offending people or causing an issue. People trying to shut you down. People, like for me, I kind of like operate silently and quietly here. You know, I'm not in anyone's face about it. It's not right in anyone's face. They don't want to see it. People have to seek out what I do, and if they want to be looking for it, it's not going to be somebody walking down the street who maybe was affected by one of these crimes and would be upset to see these things on display or for sale. Uh, that's something you're going to run into a lot more. I've heard stories of people who've worked places like that have had things like that happen, right? Not that it's not good; those places exist, but I wouldn't want the stress of that. Um, the other thing I wanted to say is, oh yeah, so if anyone hasn't seen it, I recommend checking out the documentary Collectors. I think it was from the year 2000. It was Rick Stanton and somebody else whose name I can't remember, but they're talking about Murderabilia. Rick Stanton was Gacy's art dealer. He was kind of a pioneer in Murderabilia stuff. He did a mail order catalog for Gacy where he sold the paintings and shipped them to people. He did an exhibit that's documented in that movie where they had Elmer Wayne Henley art pieces on display and on sale at an art gallery. It's like a gallery opening. So I guess it was a day or two smaller event. I think they sold quite a bit. From what I saw in the movie, it was really interesting. And there were people who were against it and opposed to it who were there too, talking about it. That always seemed interesting to me, doing like a kind of a pop-up, a gallery installation, so to say, where you're showing off art or showing off artifacts. When I say a gallery, I mean an art gallery just because those tends to be the venues for it, but it would be an art and museum sort of setup because of the pieces that aren't necessarily pieces of artwork, the documents and etc. I've always thought that would be an interesting thing to do. And I have been very lightly kind of discussing that, doing that with some of the Dahmer stuff with a few people. And it's a lot, even that is a lot of stuff to figure out. Because, well, first of all, we would need to go to LA, presumably to California, just to get a space that would want to do it and that would have enough people coming where it would be worthwhile. Then we need to arrange, you know, the rental for the space, liquor licensing and bartending, staff, security. You need to figure out pricing. You need to figure out the cut that the gallery is getting for items if things sell, an admission price if you want to have an admission for it, and then making sure that will cover the expenses and the fees, travel fees, obviously. Then there's the risk of traveling with items. Anything of value, I wouldn't ever put in a checked bag or anything, but it's still bringing things anywhere. There's risk they could get damaged or stolen or something could happen. So even doing an event like that, a little pop-up thing, which would be really cool and ideal, and I've considered in the past even doing it for the sake of doing it, to get some promotion and to maybe film some content there, or like just for the sake of hosting an event that would be fun. I've thought about it, and my kind of final thought on it at this moment, it's a pending thing, but if it were to happen, it would be I had to go in knowing that I'm probably going to be spending money to do that, not making any money. Um, and it's beneficial in the sense that it could, produce content in the future. It could sell some items theoretically. It's just promotion and content essentially, and that's I'm investing in creating that, as opposed to doing it trying to make money. But then I had to put things on pause for a while to do that, and all the time and the effort that goes into that is time that I could be spending doing other work that I could get paid for, right? Um, people need to consider uh, that I could just go get a job anywhere right now if I wanted to, and I mean not anywhere, but I could go get a regular job, and then I would have paid hours for what I'm doing. Whereas with this job, I'm not getting paid hourly. I'm getting paid based on exactly what I put into it, right? I have to find items. I have to get things at a good price where I think I'm going to make a profit. I have to calculate the risk as to if I'm going to spend $10,000 on this collection of stuff, how long will it take to make the 10,000 back? And then after that, when I start making a profit, how long until it's worth my time to do that? Because they could take dozens and dozens and dozens of hours on this stuff. I'm not putting in 9 to 5 every day and calling it quits and going, okay, cool. Now I'll just do that tomorrow and I'm going to make this much per hour. It's like I'm always working and always available to be doing work. Because, if I feel like being self-employed, I feel if I stop for a second, then it'll fall apart. Then I won't be making money. So it keeps me proactive, which is great. But um, that's one thing I think people don't realize is that my page and my media stuff kind of seems like I'm just showing off a collection, whereas I have to kind of be calculated with how I spend my time on that. I get a lot of messages from people, a lot of DMs and emails saying, "Oh, this is really cool. Could you tell me how you got this? Could you tell me where this came from? Could you tell me the story behind these items and this and that?" And I would love to chat with people about it, but uh, it's when I do have a small amount of free time, that's the only time I'd be able to talk to people like that because it's not, I guess, billable hours, so to say. And it's, I'm sure that somebody worked in an auto garage, they're a mechanic, and they come home, and then all their friends came over and just wanted to talk about mechanic stuff. It would get a little exhausting, right? I try and disconnect the social side of just chatting with people and talking about the stuff. And that's part of why I'm doing this and just making content in general and doing so much YouTube recently, so I can kind of direct people towards, hey, I'm sorry, I'm doing work stuff. I can't really just chat about this unless you're maybe a client and you're interested in purchasing something. But go look at this and you'll find it, everything you want answers to and more stuff. You can just endlessly go through all my stuff there, right?
Yeah, it does get kind of exhausting, at the end of the day. Like I'm sure people are the same way with you. Like people like to pick my brain and, like after
Mm-hmm.
a 12-hour day, the last thing you want to do is talk about murder and death and destruction,
Mm-hmm.
and you just want to lay back, watch a movie or whatever. Like sometimes I'll just have to ignore calls or just
Mm-hmm.
phone on do not disturb, especially with the inmates too, because it's like even when I'm trying to relax, it's like Susan Monica's calling me, and then James Rosica, then Ken Bianchi. It's like I can't get a fucking break, sometimes
Oh,
just
for sure.
just gotta take some time for yourself sometimes, and just gotta put
Mm-hmm.
that work off or put people off, because I mean, no matter what, you're gonna still have stuff to do. That's the great thing and the bad thing about being self-employed is you
For
always
sure.
have things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure some people are saying like, "Oh, dude, I'd love to have a conversation with the Hillside Strangler. I wish you would call me. That would be so cool." And I get that, and I know you get that too. But uh, uh, that's the thing is that this kind of all becomes a work thing, right? When I'm watching a true crime documentary, I'm taking down every single name. I'm looking for people who are related to those people. I'm doing research as to has this person sold any items yet? Did this person ever have any items? What was their connection? Um, if I'm reading a book, it's the same thing. I'm taking notes and highlighting stuff. Like I'm doing. It's not the set doesn't come out of nowhere. I don't just go on eBay and buy things. It's
Hmm.
research to find it. Um, so even when there are cool opportunities, sometimes you can't just do everything and talk to everyone all the time because um, especially with inmates, right? You have to consider that inmates are all day long in prison, kind of doing the same thing, and have a lot of time for the most part. And when you're doing all this other stuff, that time that they have free isn't always going to line up with your time when you're, not on the clock, so to say.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes people will need me to give them a call. They're like, "What time can you call?" I'll say anytime between 8 p.m., 8 a.m. and 9, 10 p.m. I can't
Mhm.
tell you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I don't mean to sound like a complaining either. I love doing this. It's a lot of fun. It's like treasure hunting. It's um easy to be passionate about because there's always interesting stuff to find, or darker stuff or cooler stuff to find. And I like the thrill of like uh uh oh, am I gonna be able to sell this? Am I gonna be able to make money this month? Am I gonna be able to pay my rent? Like, if I don't have that kind of not fear, but the risk, right? Of, oh, I'm not in a stable job. I'm not in a conventional job where I know I'm going to get paid this much, or I'm on a salary or an hourly rate. It keeps me always doing stuff. I like to have that kind of risk and sense of danger, and the mentally exhausting side of it too, which obviously you understand too, is that I'm sure you wouldn't want to be on the phone for 12 hours a day every single day talking to inmates about kids they killed, or
Hmm.
uh, horrible crimes, and I mean, I think that we're probably a lot more desensitized to this stuff than a lot of people are, but it's still, at the end of the day, it still is like a very heavy reality.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's definitely can be difficult sometimes, especially those long draining days, especially if you're having a bad day as is. This isn't the type of field to
Mm-hmm.
be constantly depressed or like in a bad mood
Mm-hmm.
because, dealing with crime and like child killers, rapists and whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
Jablonski types, that you certainly can't
Oh yeah.
take anything personal or,
Mm-hmm.
like be offended or anything. I mean, you got definitely gotta have thick skin, to
Oh,
say
for
the least.
sure. Yeah, yeah. Especially if you're in contact with the people directly too. That's another thing, is that's even more, you got regard of it even more to a certain extent. Um, what you were saying about people picking your brain is interesting, because that's something that I get a lot. I try to not talk about my job too much. Like, if everybody I know knows what I do, and I'm happy to talk with like my friends about it or family if they have questions. But meeting new people, I meet a lot of new people. I'm pretty social, and meeting new people, I'll get asked about it a lot, or I'll have some people I know who are like, "Oh, you got to hear what this guy does. You got to hear what he has. Check this out." And I have to show them my website and explain it, and then it always leads to, where do you find this stuff? And then that leads to, uh, uh, are there people that get upset that you do this? And then it leads to like, oh, you must know this or have this, or have you heard of this or watch this thing? And it's like, that's great, but that ends up being all I talk about sometimes. And I have other hobbies besides from my
Right,
job.
right.
I'm not going to go to somebody who's um like a bartender, for example, to use that again. I'm not going to go hang out with one of my friends who happens to be a bartender and be like, "Oh, dude, have you seen what's that movie with Tom Cruise? Cocktail? Is that what it is?"
I'm not
Uh,
sure, to be honest.
there's a movie where Tom Cruise is a bartender that's apparently pretty good. But, oh, have you seen that? Have you read this book? Have you watched this YouTube channel about bartending? Have you seen this documentary about this kind of alcohol? Like, do you like this? Have you tried that? It's that's a facet of somebody's life. And I guess the difference is that this was something that was a hobby of mine that I turned into a job, so I genuinely have an interest and had an interest in it. But it still is work at the end of the day, and at a certain point, it's like, um, yeah, it's nice to like read a book or like play Tetris, or watch a movie and not be in the true crime zone.
Right, right. Things to do with non-murderous things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's ironic that we're talking about this now, because I mean, I'm still saying I don't like talking about only this. We're doing a podcast where I'm talking about this, but for me today, my kind of schedule is, I got up at 8 this morning. I got up at 7 actually. Got order stuff ready, packed some things so that I'm going out of town for a minute. When I come back, I can just ship them right away. Then I had to go through all my emails that I go through every single day, which are customer emails, and then also kind of research emails, following up on leads, or looking through sites that I look to source items from. Um, then I had a tattoo appointment in the middle of the day, so I had to go to that. Come back as soon as I got back from that. I started just getting organized for this. We're gonna do this, or we're done this. Oh, I also edited 2 YouTube videos today at Starbucks. But once we're done this, then I'm, in my head, I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm gonna do work until 8 p.m. So that's, 13-hour day of just this kind of stuff, right? I want to get everything else packed. I have a little list in my head of all the things I want to go through. Um, and then after 8, it's like that's when I'm going to try and not be doing work stuff, which usually I can be pretty good with. But so yeah, this is work time for me, whether I'm doing a podcast or a YouTube thing or TikTok videos, and they're not things that I make money on, but it's still part of work, whether it's directly financial or not. I'm not going to get paid to read a book, but reading the book potentially could lead to items or people that I can get in touch with that will lead to financial things later on, right?
Right, that's how I am too. I'll take down names, or like a serial killer that's obscure, be like, let me try to track down his family, or
Mm-hmm.
he's surviving, relatives of his victims or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
You never know, and that's how you can find, hidden gems or holy grails. You never really
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yeah, there's definitely been guys doing this for longer than we have, who have techniques and have methods, and I'm sure way more advanced things too in a lot of cases, who have found a lot of things and kind of cleared out. Oh, I have all of this stuff or all this guy's stuff like this, and you can't find any more of it. But I kind of relate it to when I used to do thrifting for a living. I would sell collectibles and go thrifting and buy and sell stuff, video games and vintage clothes. Like if I were to go to a thrift store, Value Village is the big chain that I would go to here. Savers in the States, most places. If I go and I'm like, okay, I want to get Super Nintendo games and Magic the Gathering cards, and I'll sell those to make money. I would look through the whole store. I wouldn't find a single one, right? And I'd be like, well, I guess we're not making money today, and then give up. Whereas if I go in thinking I'm going to find anything that I can make money on, I'm going to get, if I find something that looks interesting, an old toy in a box, I'll do research to see if it's valuable. I'll look through shirts for vintage shirt tags that I know from just years of experience, and I know those are worth more money than they're selling for. I'll sell printer toner ink because printer toner ink is very expensive and gets donated a lot. And if I go there with a specific mission in mind, I'm not going to find a single thing. But going there with a broad idea of this is what I'm trying to look for, it's the same thing with doing the research, right? I'm going to read an entire book to get every name and then every sub name I can get from that, and then contact everyone on every platform. And maybe somebody has a Facebook page, but they haven't used it in 15 years, and they have a Twitter they haven't used in 10 years, but they have a YouTube where they're active. So you got to go there. Um, like it's a lot of just persistence and looking everywhere. That's the true answer to people saying, where do you get this stuff? So do an extreme amount of research and spend tons of time looking for it all over the place. And every once in a while, somebody comes to me with something, but generally, I'm trying to track it down.
Yeah, persistency is definitely the key. I mean, like
Mm-hmm.
talking about the Hillside Strangler, it took me probably almost 10 years writing him every single year for him to finally like write me back and actually call me, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like get an art and all that, like almost a decade later.
Mm-hmm.
So never give up.
Yeah. I mean, and talking on Kemper for that matter, he's been in prison for ages, and I'm sure he's had a lot of pen pals over the years. I know of one person who's gotten a letter from him since I've been in this kind of world. I know a single person who had written him and gotten a response, right? And they had written a ton, and they'd given him a ton of money on through JPay, and they were lucky enough to get a response. But he had a stroke a few years back, and apparently he doesn't write much. He was a pretty private guy to begin with. He doesn't really have much interest or incentive in writing letters. So when you find one from him, it's even though he's still alive, it's extremely valuable because you just can't get in touch with him. Whereas somebody like, Philip Jablonski, he only died a few years ago, but you would write him and he'd write you back a 15-page letter, and you'd ask him to send you a drawing. He'd send you 10 drawings in a package, like or guys like Robert Bardo. There's people who just there's a willingness there. And some people it's there's work in doing that. And I'm sure that you weren't from the get-go trying to get in touch with him so you could sell some stuff and make money. I'm sure it was like, I'm interested in talking to this guy and building a relationship, and it's going to take time. And unless you're doing that with a ton of people at all times, with the expectation you're not going to make any money and that it's just going to be for your own interest, and if you do benefit in some way from it, then good for you. But unless you have that passion and drive, and that's based solely on an interest in doing it, like, you're not going to last in the business, so to say.
Right. We do have our Patreon up now, which is patreon.com/murderabilia exposed, and there's so many different tiers on there, from a virtual true crime gallery, extra interviews with other collectors, different inmates, so on and so forth. So everybody should go check that out. There's tiers as low as, I think, like $1, $3, up until like $55, and it's definitely some different and unique perks, and you guys should definitely go check it out and let us know what you think.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some real value behind it. What I'd like to do too is maybe do some content on collecting tips and research tips, and how to write inmates and get responses, and not necessarily giving away destroying our whole businesses because we give away exactly what to do for everybody to get everything, but just helping people get introduced to, like, because I started out this by myself from nothing, right? And I just met people online and did research, and I'm sure that you did the same way. So I want to definitely kind of bring some of that content to people, where we're like, hey, if you're interested in this stuff, and you can't afford to buy too many things, or you're looking to get it from direct sources, here's some ways to look at that. I think there's going to be some good value behind getting behind on the Patreon, if anyone is interested, and it's super appreciated. Yeah, that's all I had to say on it.
Well, before we wrap up episode 3, is there anything else that you want to add before we get out of here?
Not too much. I mean, this is the 3rd episode, like you said. Just this morning, I guess it won't be this morning when this post. So September 15th, just this morning, the first episode went live on the streaming platforms, and then it'll be on YouTube on Friday. So I'm excited about that. It's cool to see the ball rolling now. I appreciate the work you've put in behind the scenes on this. I mean, obviously I'm behind the scenes too, but when we started, I said, I'm doing a lot of stuff and I'm busy. If you can get these certain things organized, I'd love to be a part of it. And you've been like super great with that. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So thanks for checking this 3rd episode out. Hopefully you guys have seen the first 2. If not, go back and watch those, or listen to those wherever you listen to your podcast stuff. And yeah, we have a lot of really cool stuff lined up already. A huge list of stuff to cover and people to talk to. So I think we got some really cool content coming up soon.
All right, well, we'll get out of here, and we'll see everybody on the next one.
See ya.